In the sprawling, sun-drenched suburbs of Jefferson High, a sprawling public school with over 2,000 students, Emily Harper was a new face in a sea of youthful chaos. At 24, she was barely out of college herself, her auburn hair often pulled into a neat ponytail, her glasses slipping slightly down her nose as she scribbled notes on the whiteboard. She taught history with a passion that could make even the driest topics, like the intricacies of the Articles of Confederation, feel alive. Her classroom, adorned with posters of historical figures and maps, was a sanctuary for her, a place where she could connect with students and share her love for the past. But the hallways, those were a different beast altogether. Jefferson High was a microcosm of teenage life, complete with its heroes, outcasts, and villains. The hallways between classes were a battleground of social hierarchies, where cliques held court, and the unwary could become targets. Emily, with her youthful appearance and slight build, was still learning to navigate this terrain. She stood at just 5 feet 2 inches, her professional attire, crisp blouses, pencil skirts, and sensible heels, doing little to mask her inexperience. To some students, she was Miss Harper, the cool teacher who let them debate in class. To others, she was an easy mark, too young to command the respect of a veteran educator. It was a crisp October afternoon, the kind where the air carried the faint scent of autumn leaves and the school buzzed with the electric anticipation of the upcoming homecoming game. The halls were decked out in streamers of blue and gold, the school's colors, and students wore jerseys to show their spirit. Emily had just wrapped up her third period class, a lively discussion on the American Revolution that had her students arguing passionately about whether the colonists were justified in their rebellion. She felt a rush of pride as she gathered her lesson plans, a worn leather binder stuffed with notes, and her favorite coffee mug, a gift from her brother inscribed with, "History Nerd." She stepped into the hallway, her arms full, ready to make the trek to the teacher's lounge for a quick break before her next class. That's when she noticed them, a group of 5 boys loitering near a row of dented lockers, their laughter sharp and edged with mischief. At the center was Jake Carter, a senior whose name was synonymous with trouble. Jake was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a smirk that seemed permanently etched on his face. His dark hair fell carelessly over his eyes, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew he could intimidate. His crew, Dylan, a wiry junior with a penchant for crude jokes, Marcus, a stocky kid who followed Jake like a shadow, and 2 others who blended into the background, were known for their pranks. They'd trip freshmen in the cafeteria, borrow gym equipment and never return it, or lob spitballs at substitute teachers when they thought no one was looking. To them, it was all a game, and the hallway was their playground. Emily had heard about Jake from other teachers. "Watch out for Carter, Mrs. Delgado," the principal, had warned her during orientation. "He's smart enough to stay out of serious trouble, but he pushes boundaries. Keep him in line." Emily had nodded, filing the advice away, but she hadn't had a direct run-in with him yet. She'd seen him in the halls, always surrounded by his posse, always with that smirk, but she'd managed to avoid confrontation. Until now, as she walked past, her heels clicking softly on the linoleum, Jake's eyes locked onto her. The group's conversation halted, and she felt the weight of their stares. Jake leaned against a locker, his arms crossed, and called out, "Hey, Miss Harper. Nice shirt. Looks a little tight, don't you think?" His tone was mock casual, but the words carried a sting. His friends burst into laughter, Dylan letting out a loud, "Ooh, burn." Emily's cheeks flushed, but she kept her gaze forward, her arms tightening around her binder. She'd been trained for this: don't engage, don't show weakness, just keep moving. The teacher's lounge was only 50 feet away, a beacon of safety, but Jake wasn't done. He fell into step behind her, his long strides easily matching her hurried pace. His crew followed, forming a loose semicircle that made the hallway feel suffocating. Students passing by slowed down, sensing drama, their eyes darting between Emily and the boys. Some pulled out their phones, ready to capture whatever unfolded. "Come on, Miss Harper, don't be shy," Jake taunted, his voice louder now, drawing more attention. "You're supposed to be all about, what, liberty and justice. Let's see some of that spirit." Emily's heart pounded, her mind racing through her options. She could report them later, but that wouldn't stop this moment. She could call for another teacher, but the hallway was emptying as students trickled into classrooms. She could try to talk them down, but Jake's tone told her he was looking for a reaction, not a conversation. She kept walking, her jaw tight, hoping they'd lose interest. Then it happened. Dylan, egged on by Jake's grin, darted forward and grabbed the hem of Emily's light blue blouse, yanking it free from her skirt. The fabric pulled upward, exposing a sliver of her midriff, and the boys erupted in jeers. "Whoa, check it out!" Marcus hooted, high-fiving Dylan. Emily froze, her binder and mug slipping from her arms. Papers fluttered to the floor, her coffee mug landing with a dull clunk. The humiliation hit like a physical blow, sharp and searing, her face burning as the laughter echoed. But beneath the embarrassment, something else stirred, a deep, primal anger she hadn't felt in years. Jake stepped closer, towering over her, his smirk wider than ever. "What's wrong, Miss Harper? You gonna cry?" he mocked, his voice dripping with condescension. He reached out as if to tug her shirt again, his hand hovering just inches away. The crowd of students, now a full circle around them, gasped, some whispering, others recording. Emily's hands clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms. She wasn't just a teacher in that moment, she was the scrawny kid from her old neighborhood, the one who'd been pushed around one too many times. Years ago, in a rundown community center near her childhood home, Emily's older brother, Ryan, had dragged her to taekwondo classes. She'd been 12, small for her age, and a frequent target for the older kids who roamed their street. Ryan, a lanky 17-year-old with a black belt, had been insistent. "You're small, Em, but you can be fierce," he'd said, tossing her a pair of sparring gloves. She'd hated it at first, the endless drills, the sore muscles, the bruises from sparring, but she'd stuck with it, driven by a need to prove she wasn't helpless. By 17, she'd earned her own black belt, mastering techniques like the spinning back kick, the roundhouse, and the drop kick, a dramatic move that required leaping into the air, dropping low, and striking with precision. She hadn't practiced in years, not since college swallowed her time, but the muscle memory was still there, etched into her body like a second language. Now, in the hallway, with Jake's hand inching closer, that training roared back to life. Emily's eyes narrowed, her breathing steadying as her embarrassment gave way to resolve. She straightened, her voice low but firm. "Back off, Jake. Now." Jake laughed, unfazed, and took another step, his fingers brushing the edge of her sleeve. "Or what, Teach? You gonna give me detention?" His crew snickered, Dylan mimicking her voice in a high-pitched whine. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, the tension crackling like static. Emily let her coffee mug fall, the ceramic shattering on the floor, and in one fluid motion, she pivoted on her heel, her body coiling like a spring. What happened next would be replayed in slow motion on countless phones. Emily launched into a textbook drop kick, her right leg shooting out as her body dropped low, her foot connecting with Jake's chest in a perfect arc. The impact was explosive, a deep thud reverberating through the hallway as Jake, all 6 feet of him, stumbled backward, crashing into the lockers with a metallic clang that echoed like a gunshot. He hit the ground hard, his breath escaping in a sharp wheeze, his eyes wide with shock and pain. The hallway erupted, gasps, shouts, even a few cheers, as Jake's crew froze, their mouths agape, their bravado shattered. Emily landed lightly on her feet, her skirt slightly askew, her glasses still perched on her nose. She adjusted them calmly, her expression serene but unyielding, like a warrior who'd just drawn first blood. She looked down at Jake, who was clutching his chest, struggling to sit up. "I said, back off," she repeated, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. The crowd was silent for a heartbeat, then exploded into chatter, phones still rolling as students whispered, "Did you see that?" Jake's friends hesitated, their eyes darting between their fallen leader and the pint-sized teacher who'd just floored him. Dylan took a step back, his hands raised as if to say he wanted no part of this. Marcus muttered something under his breath, but he, too, backed off, his usual swagger gone. Jake, red-faced and winded, scrambled to his feet, his pride more bruised than his body. "You're crazy." He spat, but there was no heat in it, just raw embarrassment. He shoved through the crowd, his crew trailing behind like chastened dogs, their heads down as they disappeared around the corner. The crowd lingered, buzzing with excitement, until a girl, Lila, a shy sophomore from Emily's 4th period class, stepped forward. "That was amazing, Miss Harper," she said, her eyes wide with admiration. She knelt to help gather Emily's scattered papers, her hands trembling with excitement. Other students joined in, some offering nervous smiles, others still whispering about the ninja teacher. Emily's hands shook slightly as she collected her things, the adrenaline finally fading. Let's just say I don't like bullies, she said to Lila, her voice soft but firm. Lila grinned, clutching a crumpled worksheet like it was a trophy. By the time Mrs. Delgado, the principal, arrived, drawn by the commotion and a frantic call from a hall monitor, the crowd had mostly dispersed, though the whispers were already spreading. Emily braced herself as she was called to the principal's office, her mind racing with what-ifs. She'd acted on instinct, but she knew the rules. Teachers didn't physically engage with students, no matter the provocation. She sat across from Mrs. Delgado, a stern woman in her 50s with a reputation for fairness but zero tolerance for chaos. Emily explained everything, the taunting, the shirt pulling, the escalation, and her split-second decision to defend herself. She left out nothing, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Mrs. Delgado leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled, her expression unreadable. I've seen the security footage, she said finally. Jake and his friends were out of line, way out of line. I've dealt with Carter before, he's been warned about harassment multiple times. You defended yourself, Emily, and frankly, you sent a message. I'm not condoning it, physical force is a last resort, and you know that, but I'm not suspending you. Let's call this a learning moment for everyone. Jake and his group will face consequences, and I'll handle the parents. Emily nodded, relief washing over her, though she knew the fallout wasn't over. By the next morning, a grainy phone video of her drop kick was circulating on social media, posted by a student with the caption, "Ninja teacher owns bully." It racked up thousands of views, likes, and shares, spreading beyond Jefferson High to the wider community. Students in her classes whispered as she walked in, some giving her respectful nods, others giggling nervously. The ninja teacher nickname stuck, and while Emily cringed at the attention, she couldn't deny the shift in her classroom dynamic. Her students were more attentive, more engaged, as if her moment of ferocity had earned her a new kind of authority. The school board held a meeting to address the incident, prompted by a handful of parents who argued that Emily's actions were unprofessional and dangerous. But others, students, teachers, and even some parents, rallied to her defense, citing Jake's history of bullying and the lack of intervention from the school until now. Lila's mother, a single mom who dealt with her own share of harassment, wrote a letter praising Emily for standing up for herself. My daughter feels safer in her class now, she wrote. That's what matters. Jake and his crew were suspended for a week, and when they returned, they avoided Emily's hallway like it was cursed. She heard rumors they'd been chewed out by their parents, who were mortified by the viral video. Emily, meanwhile, grappled with her newfound fame. She didn't want to be defined by one moment, but she couldn't ignore its impact. At the suggestion of a colleague, she started a self-defense club after school, open to any student who wanted to learn. It began with a handful of girls, including Lila, but soon boys joined too, curious about the teacher who'd taken down Jake Carter. Emily taught them basic moves, blocks, stances, and simple kicks, emphasizing control and confidence over aggression. Months later, as the school year drew to a close, Jake approached her in the hallway. It was after school, the corridors quiet, and he looked different, smaller, somehow, his usual swagger replaced by a slouch. Miss Harper, he mumbled, staring at the floor. I'm sorry about before. I was a jerk. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Emily studied him, surprised but guarded. She'd heard apologies before, often hollow ones, but something in his tone felt genuine. Apology accepted, Jake, she said after a moment. Let's both do better from here. He nodded, almost relieved, and walked away, his hands stuffed in his pockets. The legend of the drop kick lived on, a story students told new freshmen each fall, growing more exaggerated with every retelling. Some claimed Emily had knocked Jake out cold, others swore she'd done a backflip first. Emily let the rumors swirl, focusing instead on her teaching. She'd proven something to herself that day, not just that she could defend herself, but that she could face the chaos of Jefferson High and come out stronger. She was small, but she was fierce, and in the unpredictable world of high school, that was enough to carry her through.